If you're like me and hate carrying your fishing gear, then I'm going to show you how I put together a really simple and cheap trolley to transport everything so easily. It'll make the job much more pleasant and you'll enjoy your fishing much more. I wanted to make this a do-it-yourself project that was so cheap it was ridiculous. So the first thing I did is got myself something that would act as a trolley. What I've got here is just simply a golf buggy. The golf bag itself actually fits down through here, okay, and the great thing about these is the size of the wheels. These wheels will go over any terrain that you like. They'll go through sand, over rocks and things like that. They're very, very large and travel very, very well. Likewise, it's very easy to disassemble, folds over and very easily fits into your car. So what happens is there's all these little screws and things to hold sections in for the golf cart, okay, for the handle itself, okay, and then what happens is you just simply pull this over here, lift this up, put that there, and that fits in the car. Simple. So this is what I wanted. It had to be transportable, had to be cheap. In fact, this is about as cheap as you can get. I actually got this off Facebook Marketplace for nothing. So people are giving some of these things away. I got it for nothing, and it was in my local area. I didn't even have to travel that far. The first thing that I needed to do is make a base for it. I'd thought about sort of wire or sheet metal, but I thought that's too hard to cut. Most people can't do that, and I wanted to do something fairly simple. Also, it's probably going to be a prototype to start with, and I might improve it over time. So I just had a piece of wood that I could cut. This is a piece of thin plywood, probably a little bit too thin for long-term use because it may warp over time. I may well replace this with marine ply, but this was an offcut. And if you go to any of the areas where they're building lots of houses, they have bins full of offcuts that are going to be thrown into landfill. It's amazing. If you just ask them permission to take some of that wood, it's amazing what you can get. So I got a piece of thin plywood, and the first thing I did is just sort of cut the shape, just using a handsaw, so that it would then fit like so. Just put it down here. Okay, and it's because of the shape, because I've cut the angles out so that it holds behind these struts here, it's securely in place. Now, just starting with a flat piece of wood is not that great as a surface because I want to have the rods up here, and when I put them up here, I did a test and they slipped out that way. So what I've done is I've just nailed on a piece of pine, and this is just an offcut pine to hold the rods. So I'll have the rods sitting down here, the butts of the rods along here. So this is what that looks like. It's simply pretty rough cut too. This is all done with a handsaw, but I've just got this piece of pine here, which is the backing so that the rod butts don't slip off, and I've got two pieces of little piece of pine there as well so that nothing slides sideways. So everything is secured in there. Very, very simple. These buggies come with a padded seat, and the seat opens up. There's a tray underneath it, and that you can hold golf balls and things like that there. Well, I didn't want this padded seat, so what I did is it's riveted on. So I did actually just use a drill to drill out those rivets, but you could just tear this away. So I've taken that off and I've taken out the tray. But I did want to have a space where I could have a cutting board. Originally I thought I would keep the tray there, which means that I could have some of my bait in there as I'm using it. And the great thing was that I could use this cutting board to fit over the top of that, and it was secure and would also protect the bait that's under it, especially from seagulls and things. So you can get these. This is very, very thin, very, very cheap, this cutting board, a couple of bucks, and it would actually do the job and fit there. You can have it in the bag and then take it out to put on here and then do all your cutting on here. And as well as that, you know then that you've got your bait underneath to protect it. So that was one idea that I had of using that. It's quite secure there. That fits well, does the job. But then I thought, no, maybe I'll improve it. This cutting board, which my wife gifted me some time ago, and I was going to throw it out, and then the other day I thought maybe I'll use it this way. What I will do is I'll fit it over the top of this and it actually sort of is just the right size to fit in there. It'll be secured by this arm going across here, and I'll put a couple of hooks in it so that it's secured underneath here. So this thing, all I've done is I've put a couple of pieces of metal here. This is basically sort of a joinery metal, and what I've done is I've just cut it. It's easy to cut with tin snips because it's quite thin, very, very thin stuff. And then I've put a couple of nuts and bolts in there so that they then secure here. The way that it will fit onto this buggy is to simply put the hooks over the top and it is secure. This buggy comes with a hook down here, and I think it's for a little bucket to hold, probably to hold golf balls. And I thought it was a great idea to try and utilize that, only it's a little bit long and the bucket is a little bit close to the ground. So I actually created another hook and put it on, which is a bit shorter. And now I can put my bucket on there as well, so that it's just high enough off the ground so that when I'm walking with it, it's still above the ground and won't catch on things. This is how we're looking so far. What I've done is that the woodwork that I have done, it wasn't all of that straight, and look, that doesn't matter, it's got to be functional. So all I did is I give it a coat of paint, and that was really quick. I mean, I just had some spray can left over. I went over this. In fact, I didn't quite have enough, as it turns out. I had about half a spray can of paint left, and it's not quite fully complete, but at least it looks better than the straight untreated wood. So that's going to go down here. That just fits in under here. I've got my bucket now set up down here, and I've got this really nice and steady. And the other thing that I found is that I could fit this tray in here if I wanted to, with this connected to it. This is what my trolley looks like when it's fully loaded up. I've got 4 different size rods here. I wanted to try different sizes rods where the reels were in different places so that I could work out what was convenient and what problems I might have loading my fishing rods up here. That seems to be okay. I've got a couple of bungee cords just holding those in place, and they fit behind that little section that I built so that they wouldn't fall out. Then I've got bungee cords coming over what would be my standard tackle. So I've got my esky here, I've got some of my burley and things, then I've got my tackle bag with tackle boxes in it. I've got my bucket here. I might change that later. I might change that to, I was thinking I might have it sort of dangling down here, which is a bit higher. This is going to be a little bit low to the ground, but we'll see how that goes. So I've just got a couple of hooks in there to hold that. I've got my seat here, which is just sort of also secured with that bungee cord that holds these things here. And I've got my cutting board up here. The other thing with the actual base that I've made on this, with my trolley, I've actually got a space at the end here so that I can put the bungee cord hooks underneath that to hold here. So I've got plenty of bars showing so that they will hold in place. I took this for a walk before over some rugged ground. Everything stayed in place. So I'm pretty comfortable that that will work for me. And honestly, it really cost me very little to make this, and only really a few hours, and you can finesse it so much more, and I will do over time, I think, is just improve on this. But as a first go, I'm pretty happy with this. I then added a couple more improvements. The first thing I did was add some PVC piping on the handle so it could carry my rod holders. That was a really great place to be able to put those so they're out of the way but easy to get to. The other thing is I added a lot more load just to see how much this thing could carry, and honestly it had no problem carrying a lot of weight. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and for all the gear and tactics you've seen today, go to my website howtofish.com.au. See you next time.